Well, today I won't be working on the MG because we were at the store, and when we came out of the store, this car, a 2016 Jeep Cherokee, um, failed to start. It's always a shock when you come out and your car says, nope, not going to do it. So what I'm going to go over today in my quick little garage video is how to diagnose battery problems, whether it be the battery or the charging system or just needed maintenance. So this thing's been on charge overnight. I have a nifty little charger, which, by the way, I really recommend if you don't already have a good battery charger in your collection of tools in your garage. This is a really good one. It has a trickle charger so that you can keep, if you had like a classic car like that and you wanted to keep the battery ready to go, you could use this for that. It's a one start button, and it does everything. It'll even detect when you have the cables on wrong, and if the battery doesn't take a charge, it says it's a bad battery. Little smile, little frowny face. Anyways, not a really expensive product. Schumacher, built for charging, everyday dependable performance. It really is a great product. It's really easy to store too. It's not a big bulky thing. Getting on to task. So it's been charging overnight, but one of the things you'll notice in here, telltale sign that you got some maintenance issues, is when your battery has rat poop on it. So rats don't just poop, they also pee. And it's quite likely that we got some rat pee on this battery terminal, and that's caused a charging problem. But we're going to take this down to the AutoZone and have them put this on the tester to see if we still have good amperage on this battery now that it's fully charged. There's a little bit of debris over on this side too. So yeah, we're going to take this thing apart. But the first thing that you need to do before you get too far is you need to take out your trusty ODB2 reader. My ODB2 reader is by Ozzy Gear, and I use a piece of software on my phone called Gear, and it works really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and walk you through how to use an ODB2 reader while we're at this, because if you don't have one of these, it's another one of those tools that you absolutely have to have. Especially with later model vehicles, because you can read the codes, and you can even reset when you have the engine light, check engine light on there. So let's move into the driver's compartment and show you how these ODB2 readers go in. All right, so most cars, this is, like I said, it's a 2016 Jeep Cherokee, but most cars have their ODB2 reader right under the dash, and you can see right up there. Let me get some light on that. There you can see it. Right up under the dash. You can see there's the ODB2 reader. Now, the Ozzy Gear has a... Let me see if we can get this in the camera. Okay, so you can see how it has the same kind of pattern here, but what you'll notice is on the outside edge, right over here, there's a little key. So it makes it real easy. You can just, if you don't want to look, you can just feel for that key, and then you'll know that the device goes on right on that key. All right. So first thing, when you plug it in, you see they get a little power light. That's a good sign. You want to make sure it's properly seated. All right. Now, you really don't have to turn the car on, but you need to put the ignition on so that you can read the computer. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we got the ODB2 reader in there. I've got my key fob in my pocket. I'm going to go ahead and start the vehicle. You can see I have a check engine light, which is great because that means I'm going to have a diagnostic code. So let me show you how the diagnostic codes. Okay, so I use a program called Torque. I'm sorry, I called it Gear earlier. But you launch torque, gives you a little warning about blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, whatever. You could ignore that and you hit OK. I do. Yeah, sure, whatever. Alright, so first thing you'll notice is torque is kind of a cool little program. You'll see the indicator lights at the top, and tells you that this right here means that it's communicating, and it tells you that it sees the car and that the device is connected to the computer. So it gives you a real-time reading of the RPM. You can set up this screen. I'm not going to sell you on the torque program, but what I'm going to get to is some of the bit more valuable bits of information in here. So you can go to real-time information, and it'll give you everything that you need to know about your vehicle. This is an accelerometer, which really isn't part of the car. It's basically the phone telling you whether you're accelerating or braking. That's the RPMs. This is the position of the throttle. That's the actual speedometer. This right here tells you the intake vacuum and the coolant temperatures. So there's pages of these little controls, and you can set each one of them up to be whatever you want it to be. So I mean, we can, in this case, we have one set, and it tells you that the car thinks that it's charging. Now the charging is just measuring what the computer can see. It's not actually measuring the voltage that's going into the battery. So if the battery terminals themselves have a bad connection, it won't show up in this reading. This reading right here is just what the alternator is sending. But the good news is the alternator is sending 14.3 volts to the battery. So the voltage regulator says that the battery needs a charge, and the alternator is responding. And so if this was down to 10 or 9 or something like that, we would start looking at the alternator, if there was like a diode burnt out or something and it was only running on a half circuit. But in this case, the alternator looks strong. So in my view, the problem is either the battery or the battery posts. So let's go ahead and head back to the home page here and get the fault codes. Okay, so we're going to read the fault codes here. Doink. I think I pushed the button. There we go. So this will scan the computer in the car and read the fault codes. The red ones are what you're interested in. So these are not actually related to the battery. Throttle position sensor, high circuit out input, NO nitrogen sensor, heater sensor, circuit bank 2. Okay, so let me explain these. So when we were at the store and the battery went dead, we had a jump. And any time that you jump from one vehicle to the other vehicle detects a drain on its battery, and so its alternator and voltage regulator sends a surge of electricity, usually higher amperage than what it normally would have, to make up the difference for that battery. So when you're jumping your car, it's not uncommon for a power spike to record these errors in your computer. The store is less than 50 miles away, and I guarantee you, without just resetting these errors within 50 miles, when you drive your car for 50 miles, the computer will say, oh, you know what, that was just a transient error, and it will delete it. This was more than likely caused, both of these errors, more than likely caused by just the act of jumping the car. They're pretty technical and they read a lot of stuff, and when they see something anomalous, they don't know you're jumping the car. All they know is all of a sudden something went high, circuit high input. It just means that truck that jumped us had a bit more current sending to the system. and I think that the sensor circuit is the same thing. The heater circuit on bank 2, when you start up your car, you have an O2 sensor, in this case the NOx sensor. Those sensors have to heat up in order for them to read the chemicals that are going through the exhaust. And so when you first start your car, they have a heater that heats up that sensor so that it can read the airflow as it goes past that. And so in this case, it says that that heater sensor had some sort of a weird fault. But again, I still think that that's from the jump, and I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Everything else looks good. So reading these faults leads me to believe that the battery itself is probably the problem. If not that, then it's just the charger. So let's pull the battery out of this thing and take it down to the AutoZone to have it put on a tester. Okay, so but before I take that battery out, I'm going to clear these faults. There's the system here. Push the button up here. Whoop. I'm trying to do this with two. Okay, so if you click that little hamburger button up there, it's a little button that says clear the faults on the ECU. Click on that and it warns you, hey, if you clear the faults, you're not going to have any faults and you won't know what was wrong with the car. I get that. So now it's going to clear the faults. Completed. Okay, so now there's nothing on here. Go back to the home page. There we go. All right, let's pull this battery out. All right, so here's your standard battery box. Now, there's a couple places where you can go wrong with this right off the bat. First of all, this vehicle is a 2016 Jeep Cherokee, and I keep saying that because if you're using this as general knowledge video, you really shouldn't apply it across the platform, because if you have a newer car with a lot of newfangled stuff, Mercedes, for example, they have a computer that's a bit more sophisticated so that each key fob is recognized as a different identity and things like that. And so some of the manufacturers, and I really recommend that you look this up before you go through this, some of the manufacturers have a requirement that the computer, what this little thing is right here, that the computer have constant power. And so they sell a little device that you can either connect to the terminals themselves, not the battery terminals, but these plugs, or they have some other different piece of connector in the car itself, and they sell a little adapter where you take a battery charger and you plug your car in to the battery charger. Well, I think Mercedes sells one that connects to the ODB2 port. And so if your car requires that, then go through that extra step, or don't do it in your garage if you don't feel comfortable. But the first thing that you do, just basic knowledge, is you always take the negative terminal off first. And the reason why is because of the flow of electricity, that when you take the negative terminal off, you're breaking the circuit without causing a problem that will cause a surge that will go into the battery. It will have already come from the battery in this case. So you don't want any kind of a surge that will go that direction. The negative terminal it's returning at that point. So anything that would have caused a problem has already gone past it. So when you take the negative terminal off first, then everything after that won't be a problem. So let's go ahead and take that off. It's just a 10 millimeter socket. Make sure I have this on the right direction. And then I put it right backwards. All right, so these are some of those newer battery posts. And the trick with these is that they have a slide that tightens them. It's not like the bolt is tightening it directly. You won't be able to get this nut completely off. You just need this slide to slide. See how it moves back and forth? That's what tightens it. So once that bolt's loose, then it should give up the ghost right there. There we go. Come on, you. Little screwdriver action. All right, so this little gap right here, we just need to broaden that gap. There we go. Come on up, you. Gee Louise. It does not want to come up. It's stuck in a groove. I don't want to deform it at all. I don't want to have to buy a new one. There is definitely a groove in there. The most important thing is not to bridge between the two. So if you're using something to pry, don't connect between the two of them. That's kind of obvious, I know, but here I was about to, here we go, there, it broke loose. All right, so you can see there was a groove. It was tightened nice and tight. And there was a groove in there. So if you take that negative post, most people put the gloves on their hand, but in this case, we don't want this to accidentally push back onto the battery post. So I'm going to put a glove on there just to keep it from touching anything and pull it away. So with the negative off, I can go ahead and proceed to take the positive terminal off. All right, just pull that space on there. There we go. This thing should just come right up. Sometimes you have to pull these other two terminals off just to make room for the rest of this thing to come up, but it looks like this is going to be nice. It's playing nice. All right. So our battery has a blanket. We live in a cold climate, so we have a battery blanket. Take that baby up. And although you can see on there that this is a Mopar product, this is a manufacturer's original battery. It says that it's good, that it was put in. This is when it was put in. So it's been, it's a 5-year-old battery. So that's kind of, lifespan on a battery. We'll see. The reason why this is original equipment, and this is not actually the original equipment battery. This battery was replaced once already on warranty from the manufacturer, so they replaced it with their own products. Okay, so most batteries have a way to pull them out. Sometimes there's a strap, sometimes there's a bolt. In this case, there's a bolt right down in here, and looks like the other half, it doesn't have a bolt, it has just a flange. So when we pull that bolt out, then we'll be able to pull the battery out. So let's get a longer extension cord on there. Another great thing to have if you don't have a huge extension cord is to get a huge extension cord. You'd be surprised how many times being able to reach something from a distance really helps. Again, that's just a 10mm bolt down there. without a really long extension cord, I'd be working inside the engine compartment. Now I'm all the way up here. I don't have to worry about banging on anything or busting my knuckles. Busting knuckles is the least favorite thing to do. All right. Here's my bolt. Okay, this little flange comes out. This is what was holding the battery in place right there. Now, the trick with the battery is they're heavy. And you want to plan what you're going to do next. Well, I like to use cloth grocery bags because then it gives you a handle to hold on to. And when you put it into your car to take it to the place, you're not going to get acid and dirt and whatnot around. So let's get ourselves a grocery bag. Okay, grocery bag prepared. Let's pull this thing out. Got it folded up in the corner, so it's real easy to find the center. And when you pull on it, the sides aren't underneath it. There you go. All right, so now I have a way of carrying this thing to the car and back. All right, off we go to the auto parts store to have this thing tested.
And this is why you have a backup to your backup classic car.
At the local AutoZone, the friendly and courteous staff is going to help us check and see if this battery needs to be replaced. Go ahead and have at it.
You got a lot of rodent turds on here.
Yeah, a lot of rat poop.
Base charge, put a load on it. It is testing decent with a load on it. I'm gonna get my other tester out and test it and see what it says.
Right.
So far, so good.
All right, about the big dog. Gonna see if we can get a bit more detail on this one.
If it's still good from 2017, you're lucky.
So the idea here is to put a load on it and see how it recovers, right?
Yeah.
Checking the amperage to make sure that it can. What's it say?
Bad battery.
Bad. Oh, zooming in. Bad battery. Oh, cool. Well, now we know what the problem is. Great. Thanks, man. All right, so we have a bad battery. So what do you do when you have a bad battery? Well, the first thing you look at is, do I need to buy a new battery? And by that I mean, is the battery covered on warranty? This particular vehicle came with a battery that had a 36-month free replacement. Basically saying if it doesn't last 36 months, 3 years, then they'll replace it. Now this vehicle, when we purchased it, shortly thereafter, the battery died, and so they replaced it. So this is original equipment Mopar battery for the Jeep. And the thing that when you're looking at a battery, so now we can see they didn't use the little calendar thing when they were putting the sticker on, but they had a sticker that says that in October of 17, which is 4.5 years. This was filmed in June of 2022. So 4.5 years puts it outside of its warranty. This needs to be replaced. So there's a lot of batteries on the market, and there's a lot of things that you can buy for your battery. You have to, I mean, it's not just 12 volts. I mean, you can get 12 volts with enough AA batteries, and you'll have 12 volts. But what you need to do is look at the variables, the other features on the battery that make it so that you can buy a new one. So Group size is one thing. When you're looking at the auto parts store, they'll just look at this group size and say, okay, boom, here's your group size. If you're looking online and you want to buy something at Walmart or some other manufacturer or some other place, some other source, you need to look at the cold start, the cold cranking amps and the reserve capacity of the battery. The cold cranking amps are how well it will perform in the wintertime. We live in an area that gets pretty freaking cold in the winter. So that's a critical component to purchasing a battery. The reserve capacity is when you start your car, how much is left in after it put a load on it. So that's exactly what they were testing at the store there. They put a load on it to see how much reserve capacity was left, and it did not meet that minimum requirement. So that's why the car was having issues and why the battery was not charging back after it was done. So with those variables, you need to get out and shop the battery and find one that's meets those requirements, has a decent warranty. You can get a cheaper one, but they're like 12 months or two years. The thing about that is how long is that battery going to last? You want it to last for 5 years. They don't have to keep pulling the battery out of the car. That's a pain in the butt. But at least get a 3-year battery. 5 years are good, but you'll spend more money for those. So, whatever your budget is, look for those things. But you need to make sure you have your cold start, your cold cranking amps, and your reserve capacity. So look for those things when you're buying a new battery. All right, so continuing on the battery project here. Next thing you need to look at when you pull the battery out is don't just put it right back in there. You need to clean up the battery box and make sure there's no contaminants or any kind of if the battery itself leaked a little acid out there, you need to make sure that anything that had the acid in there has been neutralized. I like to use a water and baking soda mixture. If you need to neutralize any acid, it'll do a really great job at doing that. In this case, we have a plastic battery box, and there's no corrosive material in there aside from all the rat poop. So we're going to go ahead and get the shop vac going. It's kind of loud. I'm going to clean this out, and then we'll pick it up from there. All right, so for the sake of the video here, I'm going to go ahead and put the old battery back in just to demonstrate how to put a battery in. And then when we get the new battery in, we'll go ahead and put that in. Normally, you have to take your old battery in for a core. They give you a sort of a recycling fee for taking the old battery in. They melt down the lead in those and recycle them into new batteries. So anyway, so let's get started here. I've already cleaned all the rat poop out of the thing, and I've cleaned out and neutralized anything in there that was harmful debris that was in the battery box. So we're ready to put that back in. You notice my negative terminal here still has a glove on it. It's a rubber covered glove so that it won't discharge on anything when we start moving things around. The first thing you need to do is pick the battery up and put it in there. So that's where my Herculean strength comes in here. Let's pick this thing up. All right. So on these batteries, they have like a little shelf. Can you see this little shelf right here? That little shelf gets grabbed by this shelf up in here, and they kind of slide together. And then when you get to putting it back in, this other little device grabs onto the back side of the shelf on the other side, and it clamps it down. That puts it in place. All right, so let's slide this baby in there. Slide it up against that little shelf. Okay. Put this little thing in there. Make sure there's nothing in there, grooves on that one. want to break the bolt or squish anything. We're just going to put a moderate amount of torque on that. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is clean off these terminals. Make sure that there's a really good connection. I have a really great tool for that. Alright, this is my, my little battery post cleaner here. It has a little apparatus. It's getting a little worn, but it still works. Has a little positive one, and then this is for the post itself. So you can just put that on there and clean the post. It does a really great job of getting the post clean. Okay, and you can take off this little top piece here. Then you can clean the inside of these terminals. I don't know if you can see that from where I'm working here. I think so. So the inside of these terminals here, just need to clean them off, make sure there's no corrosion, you got good metal to metal contact. Remove any contaminants that are on there. By contaminants, I mean rat poop. I don't know why rats like to poop on batteries. It's just a thing that they do. Before we put that post back on, we're going to put a little bit of some sealer on there. This battery terminal protector is basically a grease that you can put on there. It creates a moisture barrier to keep any kind of acid or water, anything that would be corrosive, to get in there between the terminal. All right, nice thin coat of that on there, both sides. Get it on the terminal. My finger. All right. I'm going to slide that down as far as it goes, all the way down. Now the thing about these terminals is these terminals have to take up this gap. And they do it with a sliding rail, right? See this little rail? And so as you're tightening it, the underside of this nut is not flat. It has a kind of a curve to it. I have a better video. I'll post it in the description so that you can see exactly how those work. But the trick with these is not to tighten them too much, because you can see this gap right here as it gets taken up. And that's as tight as you want it. You don't want it to go any tighter. You don't want to force it. You're not trying to bend anything, because once you break these little tabs, you have to buy a whole new one. There's no way to tighten it up. All right, so let's recover the negative post. It's over here with my glove on it. And we'll get a cleanup job on that one. All right, that's nice and clean. I'm going to get some. This post, if you recall, was hard to take apart because there is actually a little snag right here. I'm going to get a utility knife and just shave that a little bit. Just make sure that this is nice and round. I'm just going to shave that little snag. There we go. It's nice and smooth now. All right. Let's get our grease on this one. All the way around. Just a light coat. It's just a moisture barrier. I'm not lubricating it. Okay. All right. On it goes. I'm going to push it down as far as it will go. That's as far as that goes. So watch that gap as it takes up. So this little thing will move that direction, and that takes up that gap. That gap right there going away. That is it. That's as far as that goes. Don't want to put too much torque on those. Everything's nice and snug. We're all happy. I am not going to put that little blanket on there because we're going to pull this battery out as soon as we get a new one. But we're going to go with this battery for a short period of time. And I'll just charge it occasionally. And we'll get a good bargain. We're going to start bargain shopping for that battery. We're making sure that we meet all the physical requirements that are set up by that battery right there. All right, so that's changing the battery on a, well, pretending to change the battery on a 2016 Jeep Cherokee. Check back when we get the new one. And also make sure you check out that video on how these little battery posts work. I did a really detailed video on those. I'll put it in the description so you understand. Don't tighten those too much because you'll break them real easy. Cheers. Well, make sure you subscribe and like, make your comments.